Alright, here we are for round 2. This time we get to be on the play, which is great. This one almost was a sketcher when I didn't see the tectonic edge, but this is good if we can untap with our Noble Hierarch, a turn 2 smiter. It's going to kill our opponent really quickly. We'll take some damage off this canopy, but games in Modern go so fast that that usually won't be a big deal. If we're playing against Burn, that could be an issue, but this is definitely a good keep here. The only thing that would make this hand better is if it had a path. We're playing against, something like Infect. We could just die. Turn 1 Aether Vial off of a Plains. So I assume we're playing against a similar, white-based hate strategy. So that could be mono white. It could be black white Eldrazi. I assume our opponent's going to have 4 paths in their deck, so Smiter might not get the job done here. Our opponent did mulligan to 6, though. Alright, double Aether Vial. We could play a second Smiter, but after drawing Collected Company, I think I want to just play another Hierarch, play the Scavenging Ooze, and set up for Company next turn. On the other hand, Scavenging Ooze is just a 2/2, which is not huge. And if our opponent plays Thalia, we actually need to play 2 Hierarchs this turn to make sure that we get Company with 5 mana next turn. I don't know if that's better than just playing another Smiter. We can hit our opponent here to 16, or to 15, and have 8 power on board. I think at this point in the game I like developing our mana. Just playing 2 Hierarchs gets 2 extra damage in this turn as well. So we actually get to hit for 7 here. And then just being able to untap with that much acceleration is going to put us pretty far ahead of our opponent. So this might be, I'm going to say it might be an Arbiter, and then they could Ghost Quarter us. But a Tidehollow Sculler is fine here. So the Smiter is just going to basically abyss our opponent. They're going to have to block every turn here. And if they don't have a Resto Angel for this Blade Splicer, then we're going to get to eat away at their board pretty quickly. And we could keep the Ghost Quarter up if our opponent plays a Lane and Arbiter of their own, then we can Ghost Quarter them back. Taking them off mana doesn't seem that important though when they have 2 vials going. And if they want to hit my Ghost Quarter with their Ghost Quarter, I guess that's fine, because I would rather be able to cycle this Horizon Canopy anyway. So I'm just going to keep up a green mana here in case one of these creatures dies and we can activate our Scavenging Ooze. Okay, so they are playing black-white. I assume this is the Eldrazi deck. Now, on 3 mana, they can have Eldrazi Displacer, or sorry, on a vial for 3 could be Eldrazi Displacer. 2 could be another Sculler. It could be a Leonin Arbiter. This could also be a Flicker Wisp on 3. So something like a Flicker Wisp doesn't really punish us for attacking with both Smiters. Another Blade Splicer would be bad, because then they'd have 2 first striking golems that they could just eat our Smiters with. A Displacer is not bad either. Again, you know, our 4/4s are just bigger than most of what our opponent can have here. So the other thing I'm kind of afraid of is a second Blade Splicer. But even if that happens, we do have the Scavenging Ooze that can grow, eating our Smiters in the yard. So I guess that's fine. I am going to cycle this Horizon Canopy first. And then we can decide how we want to make our play here. Okay, that actually helps quite a bit. Now we can play this Thalia, and then whatever our opponent's plan is with this vial, they'll either have to do it in response, or we know that we're free to attack. Okay. So the Blade Splicer doesn't come back until end of turn. So they don't actually get... Well, it's actually a lot worse for them. They don't get the Golem until end of turn, and also their Golem loses first strike. So I don't think that's what our opponent intended. But it does mean that we're now safe, I think, to go ahead and attack with these Smiters. So they went up on the vials, both of them. So we could see a Restoration Angel, we could see a Thought-Knot Seer, Phyrexian Revoker. I haven't seen this usually played, but I assume this will name Scavenging Ooze. Could just name Noble Hierarch and take us off of 3 mana. But I'm going to activate the Scavenging Ooze in response just in case here. So they did go for Hierarch, which effectively shuts off our Scavenging Ooze anyway, I suppose, since we don't have green mana at the moment. And they do get a Thought-Knot Seer, but we're going to have 3 lethal attackers coming in So our opponent's going to have to make some trades. It does mean that we're going to get this collected company back. We won't have the mana to cast it. My hope is that this Revoker will have to trade at some point here anyway. I think we can just attack with... we can attack with the Scavenging Ooze, but that just gets eaten by the Golem. So I'd rather attack with the Smiter and the Thalia. Those both have to get blocked. And the only way to really block that would be maybe a chump on the Splicer and then trading the Golem. So I think I like that attack for now. Now we can always Ghost Quarter ourselves if we want to get a green mana. I guess we could have done that with the Scavenging Ooze, you know, threatening. Probably our opponent wouldn't have seen that. But we can make that attack into the Thought-Knot Seer next turn, so we can make our Scavenging Ooze a 4/4 by just Ghost Quartering ourselves, get a forest. And I should have done that last turn. I just didn't think of it. Alright, Flicker Wisp. Let's see where this is going. Maybe targeting the Thought-Knot Seer. Also surprising that they didn't use the Vial to do that on my turn. So it's interesting whether I play this Razorridge Thicket before combat or not. If I make the attack with Scavenging Ooze here, our opponent might not realize we can get green mana. And then, you know, if they block with the Thought-Knot Seer, we can trade and get a card out of it. If I play Razorridge Thicket, they see it coming, but that means we don't have to Ghost Quarter our own Tech Edge and lose 2 cards. Considering our opponent has Shambling Vent, I guess we probably want to keep the Ghost Quarter and the Tech Edge around. So I guess we'll just go ahead and play the green source now. Make the attacks. This way we can get 2 green sources to, if our opponent just wants to block with Thought-Knot, you know, we can make it a 5/5. So they'll have to make a double block here if they want to kill the Scavenging Ooze. Alright, so they're really protecting this Phyrexian Revoker because they know it turns on Collected Company. But the way this is going to work out is, yeah, I'm going to say I'd kill all 3 of their creatures and I'd still have a Scavenging Ooze left over, so I don't think our opponent has great blocks here. So I'm kind of afraid of Eldrazi Displacer. It's like one card I always feel like I need an answer to. Otherwise I'll die to it. Declaration Stones come in for sure. Just all these unconditional removal spells. Three declarations, 4 paths. And I wish I had Hushwing Gryff still in the deck. But I do not. I took it out at the last minute before this video. I'm not going to bring in Stony Silence against the Aether Vials, but explosives are an option for just more removal. I want all of our flyers. We want to be able to block their evasive threats, and we want evasive threats of our own. We definitely need answers to Thought-Knot Seer, and Scavenging Ooze is a card that does less work in this matchup. Most cards get exiled, like all of our removal is exiling. Our opponent plays Path as well. They play, Thought-Knot Seer and Wasteland Strangler, ways to process cards. So they're usually exiling. After processing, it gets into the graveyard, but usually the graveyards just don't get that full, so I'm going to cut at least 1 or 2 Scavenging Oozes here. I think 1 might be okay, but I'd probably even rather just have explosives. The only reason to keep Scavenging Ooze in really is to keep the creature count up for Collected Company. So I think I will do that. Thalia also unimpressive here, but it's actually fine against like Vials and Paths. So it's not going to be great, but it's good enough. The first strike is also relevant when our opponent has 2 2s and 3 1s and whatnot. This hand is pretty sketchy. It has a bird, which is, second to Noble, the best opening we can have, but it does only have the 1 land. Since our opponent is playing Path, I think it's actually okay to keep this. Any removal spell is likely just going to get us another land anyway. Even more sketchy than the 1 land and the bird, I think, is having 2 Thalias in our hand. First of all, duplicates is bad, and Thalia is just not great in the matchup. So the creatures that I have are not particularly effective. We do have this Declaration in Stone, which is pretty nice, so I think I'm going to keep, but this one is pretty sketchy. I could see it being wrong to make this keep here. Eldrazi Temple is pretty threatening. I'm not gonna lie. Hope they don't have a second one and a Thought-Knot Seer. Even a turn 2 Eldrazi Displacer would be pretty tough. Ghost Quarter, not as bad. Revoker hurts us quite a bit, though. In this scenario where we just don't have any other white mana, yeah, that's going to be pretty brutal. I really haven't seen Revoker played in those Eldrazi lists very often, but it's going to get us here pretty badly. Fortunately, our opponent doesn't have anything, so if we can find some way to cast a spell, we're actually not in bad shape. But one of us is going to have to draw a land, so whoever draws a land or a spell that they can cast first, I guess, is in a good spot. Land? Yeah. Not quite. I wish this were a ghost quarter so I could at least find... Well, that wouldn't even be good. I can't ghost quarter myself down to 1 land. All right, our opponent going to discard. Yes, there we go. Probably gonna just declaration this revoker. I know that turns on, it gets like lets our opponent cycle, trying to find lands, but it just turns on our whole hand here. I think that means we'll be able to, you know, since we get to play a smiter, I think it turns on our hand before it turns on our opponent's hand. I guess either way, we're playing a declaration and then a smiter, so we might as well just play the smiter by itself. There's no reason to give our opponent a an extra draw at a land here. All right, and the early concession again. Well, as I said, playing Modern online, it does have its downsides. We've played against a couple of less popular decks and then experienced less than riveting games, especially after sideboard here. But we are 2-0, so I'm not going to complain about that.